Known the world over as a bustling, historic metropolis, London attracts tens of millions of tourists every year. It's home to countless theatre shows, world-famous sports stadiums, massive concert venues, internationally recognisable architecture, and, most importantly, a lot of pubs. To many, this is what attracts them to the British capital. However, at home in Britain, London's reputation is somewhat different. It's often thought of as a city with sky-high rent, unaffordable living costs, rising crime, and slow public transport. In the last few months, some figures on the right of British politics have lent into this narrative, variously branding London a murder capital, lawless, or simply a city in visible decline. So, in this video, we're going to have a look into these claims, and take a look at whether London is actually in decline. Have you ever wondered how much money TLDR makes each year? Or who's funding our journalism? Well, we think transparency is super important. So we answer both questions in our recent video. It's linked in the description. Let's start by having a look at the claims about London being on the decline. One of the claims made most often, as we mentioned in the intro, is that London is riddled with crime. Nigel Farage, the leader of the party, Reform UK, currently dominating in the polls, wrote a post only last week, claiming that if you were visiting London tomorrow, you wouldn't wear a Rolex, and claimed no street is safe. This has become a talking point often used by outlets such as GB News, with one presenter claiming that London is becoming lawless and falling apart under Sadiq Khan, the London mayor's embarrassing guidance. Relatedly, we've also seen a number of criticisms related to London's transport network. Nigel Farage, for instance, has criticised cycle lanes that no one uses. Matt Goodwin, a right-wing commentator, wrote a long post on X, largely trashing the London transport network, complaining of a 40-minute delay on the train getting into the capital, the price of his ticket, and the lack of English skills of people who use the tannoys on the tube. All of this led him to conclude that London is over. It's so over. In fact, the right have even started to complain about the cost of rent in London, a topic that's usually more in the wheelhouse of those on the left. Specifically, towards the end of June, Robert Jenrick posted a video to his X account claiming that this was made worse by mass migration. He's not the first to make this claim, nor is he the first person to point out just how expensive it is to rent in London. It does, though, build into the narrative developing on the right that London is, quite simply, getting worse. So, is this the case? Well, let's have a look into these claims. Let's start with crime, as this is by far and away the most significant criticism that's been levelled against London. Knife crime is an issue that the capital has struggled with for years, and the data largely shows that it's a problem it's still struggling with. A report from the House of Commons Library shows that, apart from the West Midlands, London is the worst area in England and Wales for these kind of offences. London's robbery rate is a massive 6.72 times higher than the national average, and theft from the person, which is similar but doesn't involve force, is a whopping 23 times higher. Bicycle theft specifically is 2.51 times higher than the national average. However, other serious crimes like violent and sexual offences, possession of weapons offences, and criminal damage and arson offences all occur at lower rates than the rest of England. And, like the rest of the country, London's overall crime rate has been falling relatively steadily in recent years. London's murder rate, for instance, has fallen significantly since the early 2000s, and London's so-called crime risk score, which is calculated by looking at the amount of crime in a city and weighting the more serious crimes more highly, has been improving over the last decade. So, how come so many people feel London is becoming a crime-ridden crisis zone? Well, it might be in part because, while crime rates and violent crime rates are indeed down, some of the more visible crimes like shoplifting and snatch theft have become more common in recent years. According to data analysis by John Byrne-Murdoch at the Financial Times, rates for both crimes have more than doubled since 2019. All in all, while London's overall crime rate is higher than the rest of the UK, that's always been the case, and it's trending down. Nonetheless, this general sense that London is progressively getting more unsafe might be driven by a rise in certain crimes, most notably knife crime and theft. So, let's move on and have a look at transport. Now, this is something that London is known for, with an estimated 4 million journeys being taken each day on the tube alone. Since the completion of the Elizabeth line in 2022, it's gone on to be the busiest single operator in the UK, and is rated positively by 55% of Londoners. More generally, people using Transport for London services consistently say that they're satisfied with it, and public transport has become more popular in recent decades. Now, this isn't to say that transport in London is cheap, nor is getting into London cheap, but it's sometimes easy to overlook how well connected the city actually is. When it comes to cycle lanes, London has seen its cycleway quadrupled since 2016, from a mere 90 kilometres of cycleways to more than 360 kilometres. Along with this expansion, we've seen the number of cyclists in London also expand, with a 70% increase since 2016 and a 50% increase since just 2022. Although cycling still remains a relatively niche way of getting around, accounting for less than 5% of trips in 2023. All in all, it looks like London's transport infrastructure is pretty good. And finally, housing. Now, rent in London is obviously incredibly expensive, with the average asking rent price per month being roughly £1,300 higher than the rest of the UK. Over the last 15 years, the rental price in London has risen by 83%, an average of about 5.5% per year. Altogether, this makes London the 8th most expensive city in the world to live in. Now, the only thing that should moderate any of this is the fact that wages have also increased in the past few years, making rental pricing a little more affordable. In 2022, rental prices were 20% higher relative to 2010, taking into account wage increases. Right now, it's about 15%, a decrease of about 5 points. All in all, while renting in London and housing costs more generally are clearly stupidly high, this isn't a new phenomenon. So, all in all, clearly while some of the criticisms of London do hold up, on the whole, things are improving. In other words, London certainly isn't over. Everything we've discussed in today's video plays into a broader sense of uncertainty in the world at the moment. And who's so often in the middle of all that? Well, the United States. So in the next issue of our magazine Too Long, we're discussing this geopolitical shift, and whether we're currently observing the end of the American order. In that section, we discuss everything from the collapse of democratic norms in the US to the decline in American soft power, to issues with the US economy or the battle for universities, before discussing who could potentially take over in a post-America world. So if you want to find out what we really think, now's your chance. It's not just the US though. This issue is our longest ever at 78 pages, full of our very best journalism and analysis. So we also get into why Germany's military might is growing, if Farage could become the UK's Prime Minister, why countries are outsourcing their migrants, why the global order is collapsing with Professor James Kerr-Lindsay, and why leaders like Putin and Netanyahu seem to be getting away with it. The magazine has now been officially published, so if you order a copy today, we'll ship it to you as soon as we can. Or if you select the digital edition, we'll send a digital version of Too Long straight to your inbox. Plus, if you want the best deal, make sure that you subscribe to Too Long. That way, not only do you get every issue going forward, you'll also get 20% off every copy as long as you're a member. On top of that, this week only, if you use code LASTCHANCE20, you'll get an additional 20% off this copy, bringing down the cost from £9.99 to £6.40 for a digital edition, or £13.99 to £8.96 for a physical edition. This really is your last chance too. From next week, all new subscribers won't receive this issue of Too Long, instead having to wait until December's The New Middle East issue. So if you want the reduced subscriber pricing on this issue, this really is your last chance. As we outlined in our recent video on TLDR's finances, TLDR actually made a loss last year, and Too Long is a big part of our plan to make TLDR profitable in 2025 to continue funding the free videos we release every day. So if you want to be part of that, then head to toolong.news and subscribe today. We really appreciate your support.